Luke Strange, how are you, my friend?
Doing great.
It's great to have
Fantastic.
you here on the program. Thank you so much. Cool Hand Electric, the name of your company. It's a great brand. It's very catchy. Actually, before I get into the question that's come in, let's talk a little bit about it. Where did that name come from? Cool Hand Electric.
Well, my name's Luke. There was a movie called Cool Hand Luke, and
Yeah.
great character. I when I started in the trade, I didn't actually watch that movie. And I was dropping a bunch of those 8 foot light bulbs, and making a big mess. And
Mhm.
the lead said, "Luke, use two hands." And so they started calling me Two Hand Luke. And that was a way of them making fun of me, But then once I actually gained a little bit of respect, they started calling me Cool Hand. And by that time, I had watched the movie and
Yeah.
really like it. Paul Newman, great character, doesn't give up. A lot of hard stuff happens, and he keeps he keeps a grin on his chin, that type of deal. So he handles problems pretty well. I like that character.
Yeah. Paul Newman in general is just a cool guy.
Oh,
Absolutely was.
so cool.
Yeah. He's so cool. Okay, a question's come into the radio program. What are the signs of a potential electrical fire hazard? I don't have the stats on this, and you may not have them handy, but I do know that many home fires start from an electrical issue. For instance, maybe it's an appliance like a toaster oven that has caught on fire, got too hot. Maybe it's an overloaded circuit and the circuit breaker didn't trip and the outlet just basically burst into flames, which can happen. When I was a kid, I'll tell you something. When I was a kid, I remember I was getting ready for school and my mom was blowing our hair dry. That's back when I had hair, a long time ago. And I think my father had worked on the hair dryer, and, back then, I don't know how they are today because I don't have to worry about blowing my hair dry. There were different switches, one for the fan, one for the heating element, and so forth, and for some reason, the fan went off, but the heating element didn't stop, and my mom put it down, and it started to melt and basically combust. So these things can start a fire in the home, and there are ways to help prevent that. So what are some signs that we might be looking for?
I love this question. So our electrical code, that's part of the NFPA, National Fire Protection Agency. So we definitely have a lot of passion about that. So main things that I see, common things are overloaded circuits. So
Mhm.
what do I mean by that? People getting the plug strips themselves because it allows a bunch of more things to plug into,
Yeah.
and having that one plug strip into the wall, and then they're plugging a lot of things just for convenience. But what happens is those spots aren't really rated for that much power to pull through. They'll get very hot, and it might be around draperies or a couch or something like that. I've seen that so many times, and that extra heat will really catch stuff, especially if you think about dust and dander and those other things that can kind of cause an accelerant or cause bad connections. So that's a common thing. I've also seen a bunch with um, older circuit breaker panels. The manufacturers, they're 20, 25 years, 30 years in that range on accuracy, depending on the brand and how it's been maintained. But the older they get, the breakers will just stay on,
Mm,
and the wiring connected to it will pull. If it's a 15 amp breaker, it may be 16, 17, 18 amps before it actually kicks off, the older it gets. And that extra power causes hot spots in the plugs and switches. Well, you might have one loose connection there, and you're plugging in a space heater, very common. And then that will start melting the plastic, getting things outside there hot, catching something on fire. I see that quite often. Older houses too. In our area, I know they have some of the old, very old dried wood in the attics, and they had
mm,
that knob and tube wiring.
yeah.
That's a common. If you have that, just get rid of it as soon as you're able to, because there's so many bad connections in there, it'll spark the insulation, and it'll really start smoldering the studs that they're built on. Seen that quite a few times. And then something else I've seen is people don't realize that their smoke detectors expire. They have, when the manufacturer, they have on the date, it'll have an expiration date, and they're built to last typically 10 years. There's a lot of carbon monoxide ones that are about 7 years, but most of them are really accurate for 10 years, and they have the date on there. And people will go 12, 13 years, and they'll change the battery, the little backup battery, and think everything's fine. But the backup battery is supposed to be changed, annually, just for whenever the power goes out, it's able to just to make enough noise to wake everyone else up. But the backup battery has nothing to do with the function of the actual smoke detector.
Mhm.
That smoke detector will gather dirt and air inside of it, from just normal living, pet dander, whatever. And over a period of time, it's just not reading the change in the air very well. And that can cause, if there is a fire, that can cause you not to be able to get up quick enough or get your pets out, those type of things. So that's the common stuff that I personally see. And then there has been some, if there's a big storm and lightning in the area, that's massive amount of voltage comes into the house and things just can really fry. I've seen that too. So it's something we don't really have control over lightning, but you definitely have control over not plugging in too much stuff. You have control over your making sure your smoke detectors are up to date and making sure your breaker panels are accurate. That's something you can really do to take care of it. If there's lightning on your house,
Mm.
I figured out a way of fixing that. So
Look, I've got a question. If you and your team were to go and wire a house from scratch, let's say it's it's either like a retrofit, it's an old house, but all the wiring's coming out and new's going in, or maybe it's just new construction. Picture this. Would you expect with your expertise and your training, following all the codes, and with the wiring today and the breakers today, that it's gonna be a pretty safe house as far as electrical occurrences, let's say a fire, versus a house that's 50, 100 years old?
oh, absolutely.
Mm.
Absolutely. I mean, it still needs to be maintained. People forget about that. Circuit breakers do need to be turned off and on about once a year. And lizards and different stuff will get inside of there. So it does need to be maintained, but absolutely, it's way better than the old stuff. I mean, the science and the testing, the code has updated every 3 years. They put new equipment in to or new standards to follow, and the code has gotten way better, way safer. So older houses are great. They have a lot of character, but they do come with some sketchy wiring that needs to be addressed.
Yeah, and if the house is 70, 80, 90, 100 years old, then if it hasn't been addressed, it should have been a while ago, and it needs to be addressed because those are the homes that are probably going to have a problem before the new ones. There's just so much knowledge and science now, so much experience too. They're like, "Okay, we know that if we use this gauge with these type of outlets in this type of instance, for instance, these outlets are gonna be probably used for lamps in the master bedroom, but these outlets in the kitchen, right, on the backsplash may be used for mixers and blenders. Totally different, right? So, and years ago, I don't think they had dedicated circuits for appliances like a refrigerator. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the code is have a dedicated um, circuit for a fridge, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
Very
yeah.
common practice. Yeah.
And when I was young, we just plugged it in, and then when the fridge cranked up, the lights would dim. Good old days of the lights dimming. You know, it's interesting, Luke, you don't get that much anymore, right? But I remember when I was a kid, I lived in some old houses, and if an appliance turned on, the lights would dim.
Mm.
Yeah, but sure enough, they come back up again. So what is happening in that instance when the lights dim and come back?
Yeah, it wasn't wired for the amount of load that is actually being put on there. So it's pulling too much power. I mean, that's as simple as I can. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Just pulling too much power, wasn't wired for it.
So a tip, everybody, if your lights are dimming, there's a problem with that circuit.
Yeah.
Shouldn't be. Shouldn't be. Luke, as
Absolutely.
always, thank you so much for joining me. Love your expertise. Have a great day.
Okay.